Remember this teacher from Module 1? You can how he got a message, an email from someone who he thought was a student, went ahead to click on it and got redirected to update an app in order to be able to look at that message and see the message, and from there lost access to his system. What do you think happened to him? How do you think he could have prevented that situation? Remember when we talked about the different types of attack threats and risks, we mentioned that it is very possible for different types to be used or to be brought about to get an information from the victim. The teacher was sent a phishing mail to be able to get him to release his details, and from there a ransomware was carried out on him. How do you think he should have prevented or responded afterwards? We've looked at what happened to him. How could he have prevented that? We talked about different measures that we're going to look at different measures to prevent such a situation from occurring, and what are the response after such an incident has happened. Cybersecurity is a critical concern for educational institutions, and it requires a multi-layered approach to ensure protection from all fronts and prevent breaches or incidents. It is very important to consider the three components, that is software, hardware, and peopleware, when deciding on what approach to take. When it comes to cybersecurity, there are different approaches to it. You're either preventing against an incident or you're treating the aftermath of an incident. We're going to be looking at the different multi-layered approach that you can use or you can employ to ensure that you're protected on all fronts. The teacher was first of all received a phishing mail that made him input his details before getting a prompt to update an app that led to him missing or installing a ransomware before all his files were lost and he was locked out from the system. So cyber attack can come from different layers, it can come from different angles. You need to understand the different approaches you need to take to protect yourself, protect your resources, and prevent breaches or incidents. What are the different approaches to cybersecurity? We have the preventive approach and the curative approach. When we talk about preventive approach, what does that mean? This approach focuses on applying measures to prevent cyber attack from happening. This is a before it happens, you are carrying out preventive and proactive measures to make sure that you're not susceptible or you're not vulnerable to these attacks from the beginning. While curative approach focuses on detecting and responding to these cyber attacks that have already occurred. Here you're going to look at what has happened and how you can respond to it or how you can prevent it from reoccurring again. The main aim is to minimize the likelihood of a cyber threat, vulnerability, and attack in the preventive approach. Here you're carrying out activities that would help minimize the likelihood, help minimize your vulnerabilities, help minimize yourself from being attacked. Why for the curative approach? This is concerned and the aim is basically to minimize the damage and prevent further harm. Here it has already happened. What you're trying to do is to minimize what has happened, to minimize the damage, to minimize and prevent further harm. How can you prevent it from reoccurring? This is what the curative approach to cybersecurity takes. Now we're going to look at the different types under these different approaches. Now we're going to look at examples of preventive measures. We have firewalls. A firewall is a computer network security system that restricts internet traffic into, out of, or within a private network. This software or dedicated hardware software units functions by selectively blocking or allowing data packets. This will prevent attacks and set perimeters for your system, where internet traffic into your system will be regulated, and out of your system and even within your system, especially in a private network, will be made to so that attacks will not be able to go through. You won't be able to access particular websites that are known to be prone to hackers or attackers. So firewall helps you safeguard your network, helps you safeguard your data packet to make sure that you're within a particular area or you're within a particular safe environment. Antivirus software. This is a program or a product designed to detect and remove viruses and other kinds of malicious software from your computer or laptop. These malicious softwares are code that harm your computers and laptops and the data on them, where we talked about the different types of suspicious malware. We talked about viruses, we talked about Trojan, we talked about worms. So these antivirus softwares are particular to and designed to detect and remove all these types of viruses. We have encryption. This is a way of translating data from plain text, that is when it is unencrypted, to ciphertext, that is when it is now encrypted. Users can accept encrypted data with an encryption key and decrypted data with a decryption key. This is a way of sending messages or sending information over any network in a way that the other party cannot, or any other party cannot be able to have access to it except they have the key to such an encryption. Encryption makes plain text to become ciphered text in a way that not any individual without the key will be able to answer it or will be able to see what is being sent. We have access control. This is a security technique that regulates who or what can view or use resources in a computing environment. It is a fundamental concept in security that minimizes the risks to your system, to your business, to your organization, to your environment. Access control is the way you ensure that individuals who do not have access or who do not have profiles or who do not have the key to your environment gets in. It is a security measure which puts in place access or instructions to regulate individuals that can view, that can use, or that can have access to a restricted environment. There are so many types of access controls we have in security. For physical access, we have doors, we have key locks, we have fences. For your security, your computer systems, we have biometric systems, password systems, and so much more. Access control is put in place to prevent unauthorized access to individuals. Training and awareness. This is a very good preventive measure as it brings the results. It brings about education on all these different attacks, so that once you're aware of the different attacks, you'll be able to know what to look out for and what to prevent. If you're not aware, ignorance of what an attack can look like or what a threat is can result into being vulnerable to these attacks. Knowing what social engineering is will keep the users and keep everybody aware of phishing calls, smishing, or even phishing mails. So training and awareness is a very important preventive measure and one of the most effective to prevent cyber attacks, cyber threats, or being open to cyber risks. Risk assessment and policy implementation. This is where you try to find out what are you vulnerable to, where are you more risk, or where are you more risk prone in your system. Is it in your access? Is it in your encryption? Is it in your physical system? Or is it in the people? Do you need to train more? This is where you assess what you have in your system and what you need. This is policy implementation, making sure that different policies and strategies are in place to make sure that your system is always secure at all times. These are some of the most common and used ways for prevention in a cybersecurity environment. Now we're going to look at the examples of corrective measures. This is when cyber attacks has happened and what to do to respond to these attacks. They include incident response planning. This is the act of planning for the necessary steps that need to be taken in the course of an attack or in the course of a threat being carried out. This is the documentations of predetermined set of instructions or procedures that can be used to detect, to respond to, and to limit the consequences of a malicious cyber attack against your system, against your environment. It is very important to know that it helps you plan. It gives you an idea of what to do, how to prevent, how to detect all the system. It is a written document formally approved to be able to share to users, to know that this is what to do when you're attacked, this is what to do when you get a phishing mail, this is what to do when you've given out your details, this is what to do when your system, antivirus system, is being hacked by unknown users. So this is an incident. After an incident has occurred, what to do to detect it, what to do to respond to it. This is the planning ahead of it. What are those things that you're going to carry out? We have cyber forensics. This is after an event or an incident is carried out to try to determine what happened, how did it happen, what can be done to make it better, or what can be done to prevent such from happening again. This is a field of technology that investigates techniques to identify and store evidence from a computer device. Here, this has to do with finding out what went wrong, how did it go wrong, to get evidence, to see, okay, this is what was happening, this was how the malware was able to get into the system, or this was how the virus or the rootkit was able to get into the system, this is how many systems it has infected, or this is how many systems that is susceptible to this attack. It's very important to know that this is used to uncover evidence that could be used in a court of law against the hacker, or in a court of law against the attacker of such incidents. Systems recovery. As the name implies, this has to do with how recovery options can be opened to someone who has gone through an attack. This contains several tools that you can use to get back to a system, that is to carry out a system repair on a attacked system. It helps you recover files. This is the process of trying to recover files or recover systems or information or documents from a cyber incident that has occurred. Disaster recovery, where systems recovery is particular about getting back your files, getting back your information from a system that has gone through a cyber attack. Disaster recovery is a more robust activity or a more robust measure that has to do with the method of regaining access and functionality to an IT infrastructure. So it goes beyond your system. It can go towards your firewall, your backups, after events like a natural disaster, cyber attacks, or even business disruption. An example can be after the COVID-19 pandemic, the process by which schools had to recover and get themselves back to the way it was from all the different data that was lost because of nobody to maintain backup or nobody to maintain the system. So disaster recovery is very particular about returning an IT infrastructure, the totality of that infrastructure, back to the way it was. It ensures that you are able to withstand, it ensures that you are able to, as a whole, as an organization, get back to what to do. A very important aspect of disaster recovery is in data backup. This is in disaster recovery, you carry out systems recovery, try to get your data back into your system, your computer system, and your devices. So this is what disaster recovery is or encompasses. Business continuity planning. This is a document that outlines how a business, a school, or an organization will continue operations during an unplanned disruption in services. A business continuity plan is set to tell or to give an outline of what to do when under an attack, what to do when you're going through a disruptive process or an incident is occurring. This is the way it outlines the steps to carry out to be able to return to a state of where you were before the cyber incident or before the cyber attack took place. It is important to know that the different approaches to cybersecurity can also be related to software, hardware, and peopleware. When we're talking about the preventive parts, what are those things that has to do with software? What are those activities you can carry out, and what are those creative activities you can carry out in relation to software, in relation to your hardware, and in relation to you as a user, that is the peopleware of this information, of these systems, of this environment, of these infrastructures. We're going to look at these different approaches in relation to all that. Software refers to the computer programs and applications. These are all the programs that you use on your computers, on your systems, on your devices, that make the computer do what it is expected to do. We're going to look at safety measures in relation to the software. They include setup of an intrusion detection and prevention system. This is to identify and respond to cyber attacks. This lets your system know what are those things that you shouldn't have access to. Very popular on safe websites, or when you're trying to go or access activities that would put your computer at risk. This setup will prevent it. It also prevents, it helps to detect when your system is under attack, when there's an intrusion about to happen, and it helps to also prevent it. This is the use of a firewall, an IPS and IDS system. So getting a very strong firewall will help to be able to identify and respond to potential cyber attacks. So this is something very important to carry out, more like a preventive measure or approach to your software security. The use of web filtering and content monitoring software to block malicious websites and inappropriate content. Usually, when getting access to all these sites that are not secure or malicious websites, the use of a web filter and a content blocker software would prevent, when you're not around or when you're not available, from anybody having access from your system to these websites. This way you will not be able to get access to them and become vulnerable to these attacks, because by downloading from these websites or by installing this software, you're being exposed, or you can be exposed to these attacks. So having this in place, that would even prevent access to these websites at all, so there will be no downloads or even access to them, is a very good preventive measure or approach to securing your software. You keep your software and operating systems up to date with the latest security patches to ensure protection against vulnerability. Remember when we talked about unintentional threats, we mentioned software bugs. There are times when vendors and organizations release software and later find out that this software are susceptible to particular attacks. Then over time they release patches that is able to help this system to fight against such vulnerabilities. That is why it is very important and crucial to always carry out updates on all your softwares, on your phone, on your system, to ensure that you are up to date with the latest security patches, to ensure that your system or the software you're using is not vulnerable to an attack. This is very important in ensuring that your software is always secure. The use of encryption to protect sensitive data and use secure protocols like HTTPS to ensure data is transmitted securely. Install and update antivirus and anti-malware software regularly on all your devices to protect against viruses, malware, and other malicious software. Remember, we talked about the importance of updating your software. Now imagine you've updated your software and you don't update your antivirus and anti-malware software that is supposed to detect if these viruses or if this malicious software has entered your system or has already been downloaded. So it is very important while downloading or while installing this software, this malicious software, that anti-malicious software, that you update it regularly, that you make sure that when patches are sent from the vendors, that you go ahead to install these patches. Updating regularly can never be overemphasized, because this is what keeps the bad guys away from systems or softwares that are vulnerable. To implement firewalls and configure them correctly to prevent unauthorized access to networks. Use virtual private networks to encrypt data transmitted between devices and networks to prevent interception by cyber attackers. Remember, we mentioned that there are different ways cyber attacks can take place over the network, over your system. To prevent this, always use a VPN to make your data and your communication within your system private, especially when you're transferring devices or when you're transferring information or files from one system to another or within a network. So this will keep it private, and cyber attackers will be unable to intercept your communication, especially with the use of spyware. Now we're going to look at hardware. Hardware, this refers to the physical components that we have in our computers, such as our computer devices, our servers, our printers, the USB, chargers, adapters, etc. These are the physical components that we can see, we can touch, that we use. Remember, software, you can't exactly touch them because these are programs, these are codes. For hardware, you can see them. These are the physical parts of the computer system, of your devices, of your infrastructure. We're going to look at safety measures in relation to hardware. What are those things, and how can you protect your hardware from cybersecurity, from cyber attacks? How can you be cyber secure in relation to your hardware? We have secure all devices and systems with strong passwords and two-factor authentication. Make sure that to get access to your system, there are passwords and there's security in place to ensure that not anybody can get access to your system. Encrypt sensitive data on storage devices and backup data regularly. Use external storage devices to back up and store in safe locations. So for your hardware, ensure that you always have backup at different or periodic intervals to make sure that all your information are safe from having just one source or having just one device or just one. Save in different locations. Do not save your external storages in the same location as your devices. Authorize. Use physical security measures like locks, alarms, and cameras to prevent unauthorized access. This is talking about your buildings, your school buildings, your offices. Having or making sure that they are always locked and there's alarm in place and cameras. Just like we have phone security that allows that anybody who tries to access your system, it takes a snapshot of the individual. This can be used as a deterrent to any unauthorized access. So once individuals, yes, there are security measures in place that cannot be circumvented, it keeps you safe at all times, especially for your hardware. Do not allow unknown devices like USB, flash drives, printers, etc. to be connected to your system. This is one easy way to give hackers and attackers access to your system, getting connected to sources or devices that you're not aware of, like flash drive or printers or USB. once they get connected to your system, these attackers can get remote access to your files, remote access to your internet or your network. Control access to USB ports and disable unnecessary services with device management policies. This allows you to limit the number of physical ports that can be accessed on your system, making sure that even if you're not around, anybody who tries to input a USB cord or a flash drive to your system, it won't work. You manage unnecessary services. Make sure that the USB port available is limited to a particular number, or that can be accessed only via a particular process or a particular measure. Implement strict policies on bring your own devices program. If you're in an environment or a school that allows you to use a particular system that is access to the school website via set devices, and you want to use your own device, ensure that you have all the security measures in place that would safeguard both the systems being brought in and the systems already in the program. Monitor networks and devices for suspicious connectors. Always be aware and always be available to check for unauthorized logins or unauthorized connectors. Seeing a new device has been connected, always ensure that that device is something you connected yourself or something that you're aware of. Like seeing a new printer has been connected, try to find out who connected that printer. Were you the one? Was it when you were not aware or when you were not physically in your office? When you see a new device has been installed, try to find out what device has been installed. Try to find out how did it come to be. Was it something you're aware, or was it just done and you wake up one morning and you see that a new device has been installed or a new software program has been installed to your system? Always monitor the networks and devices for suspicious connectors. It's just like when you're using your phone device, your smartphone, and you see a new device has connected to your hotspot. Try to find out who that device belongs to. Ensure that's why we say ensure you use passwords to your system to make sure that unauthorized access, control access is ensured at all times, because getting remote access to your system just needs the hacker to connect to your network, to connect to your system. If they can't get it physically, that is, they can't attach their USB port or flash drives or cords to your system, they go the route of software and try to get access to your system. So always monitor for devices or networks that are connected that you are not aware of. Isolate compromised devices from group. If you have your phone, your laptop, your iPad connected to a particular network and you find out that your phone has been compromised, always isolate and immediately isolate your phone from your network so that it doesn't get to infect other computers or other devices on that network. Remember the Morris swarm attack. Once it appeared or once it infected a particular system on a network, it was easy for it to spread to other systems on that network. But if the first infected device they were able to separate and isolate it, it's going to truncate any spread or any replication of that malicious software. Maintain. Ensure that you carry out regular maintenance on your devices. Change faulty parts and ensure to use recognized repairmen. Do not use or give your devices to anybody you do not know, because they can also install spyware, they can also install hardware, they can also install external devices on your system without your knowledge. So use recognized repairmen at all times. Peopleware, also referred to as the users. These are individuals who use, manage, command, and generally interact with the software and hardware components of the computers. Without the peopleware, the hardware and software are just there. So it is very important to note that all three components work hand in hand and are susceptible to attack from any angle. So what are the security measures and what are the approaches that you can use to safeguard yourself as a user? This includes Train users on safe and responsible technology use and conduct regular security awareness training. Every year, every day, every time, these attackers find more sophisticated way to get access to systems. So it is very important to keep up to date to the different types of security attacks that you can be open to or vulnerable to train your users, train your students, train your teachers, train your administrators on safe and responsible technology use. What are those things they need to do and how to conduct themselves to be able to always be abreast with new security options. Develop and enforce acceptable use policies with consequences for policy violations and limit access to sensitive information on a need-to-know basis. This is one way to ensure that your system is always secure. Enforce that do not use external storage devices apart from the ones approved, or do not use passwords that are not strong. So ensure that policies are always met and that consequences for these policy violations are set. Limit access to sensitive information on a need-to-know basis. Everybody should not be accessible. Everybody should not have access to private or confidential information or sensitive information. This way, it reduces the attack surface. It reduces the number of people that can be attacked by hackers. Monitor user activities, investigate suspicious behavior, and encourage a culture of cybersecurity awareness and reporting. It is very important to note that early reporting helps to curb a widespread attack. When you see that you've given out your details or you've been social engineered and you've lost your details or your credentials, it is very important to report it immediately. Once people are aware that there is no need to be ashamed or there is no need to hide such incidents, it saves time and it saves resources and helps you curb this attack from being widespread at a very early stage. So it is very important to encourage a culture of cybersecurity awareness and reporting, to investigate suspicious activities. When you find out that you try to log in and you make a mistake and you say that, and you see that this is your third try, can you know that next try your system will be locked out and you're just trying for the first time? This should help you know that suspicious activity that's taking place on your system. This should help you know what is the next step and what to do. Implement strong passwords and two-factor authentication for all accounts. Regularly change passwords and revoke any compromised credentials. Perform regular backup of important data. What is authentication? When we talk about two-factor authentication is the process of determining whether someone or something is in fact who or what they say they are. Authentication technology provides access control for system by checking if the credentials being inputted by a user match what is in the database, or if that person is an authorized user in a data connection or in a server. There are different types of authentication that can be used for the process of user identity confirmation. Usually we have things like user ID cards, passwords, biometrics, and so many more. The use of single factor authentication is when you use just one form to authenticate or to confirm that a user is who they say they are. While two-factor authentication process is the use of unique different forms to authenticate that this person is who they say they are. For example, if you're using a single factor authentication, once you input your password, you get an access to a system, while a two-factor authentication can include inputting the password that you have and a soft token or something else like answering a security question to be able to confirm that yes, you are the person who you are saying you are, because you can get your password compromised, but will you also get this second question or this second level of authentication incorrect? So two-factor authentication is very important. We also have multi-factor authentication. This is using different forms, that is more than one, not just what you know but who you are, like using biometric, then after that using answering a security question. So there are different ways you can confirm identities. This is a very important way of ensuring security on your devices or on users, making sure that they are who they say they are, using multiple ways and multiple factors, trying to get, are they who they say they are? Do they know what they say they know? Do they have what they say they have? So it is very important because it enables you to keep your network, your system, your environment secure by permitting only authenticated users or processes to gain access to your protected resources. So when you use this form, it ensures that only people who have this authentication, only people who are authenticated, you've confirmed that they are the users, can get access to your system. Verify user access, backup and recovery plans regularly. Ensure that all the users on your system or your network knows what are the actions to carry out if under attack, what are the actions to carry out if you've been attacked and you've given out your details. Ensure that there's regular backup so that even if an attack happens and you have to format your system, you can still get back all your important documents and files. Use different user access and recovery plans regularly. Always notify law enforcement and affected parties if personal data has been stolen or compromised so that they can carry out a check and change passwords or change their access controls to prevent access by unauthorized users. So we've looked at the different approaches to preventing cyber attack, preventing threats from being carried out, and ways to minimize the risk exposure of users, software and hardware. Now we're going to look at an introduction to incident response. This is a critical aspect of cybersecurity that helps users prepare for and respond to security incidents. In trying to prevent it doesn't happen or we find out that an incident has occurred, this will help you respond to this security incident. So let us dive right in. These are a set of procedures that are designed to detect, investigate, contain, and help recover from security incidents. Now imagine this. You are a teacher walking to your classroom. Suddenly your phone buzzes and you see a broadcast message from your colleague. Your heart skips as you read the subject. Urgent, security breach. You open the message and learn that a hacker has infiltrated the school network and all student, staff and faculty information has been compromised. What do? Do you panic? Do you freeze? Do you feel confident and prepared enough and know the next steps to handle this situation? So we're going to look at what are those things you can do when under attack or when you find out that an attack has occurred. We're going to look at a basic incident response plan. This is a step-by-step on what to do and how to carry out activities or what to react and how to react to after an incident has occurred. 1. You identify the incident. Determine what kind of incident has occurred and the scope of the incident. Was it a ransomware attack? Is it a virus attack? Is it a Trojan attack? Has everybody been social engineered? Has an administrator released their rights and the attacker now has remote access to the whole system? To determine the scope of the incident, who are those affected? How many systems are affected? How many users are affected? What is the scope? What is it? A physical attack? Was the physical laptop or your physical device stolen? So try to determine what has occurred. Number 2, contain the incident. Take immediate steps to contain the incident and prevent it from spreading. This can include isolating the compromised device, unplugging from the network, alerting others to be able to be aware and prevent such attack from spreading. So you try to contain the incident as much as possible. Number 3, assess the damage. Determine the extent of the damage caused by the incident. How many files have been lost? How many systems have been infected? Determine how many servers has closed down to be able to know the extent of the damage caused by the incident. 4. Notify the appropriate team. If this happens to a particular user, include your IT specialist, include your IT department, let them know what has happened. And if it has happened to the IT department, tell and include all the users so that they can be aware and know that something is happening and safeguard their information and details. Notify the appropriate team, get the parties that need to be involved to incident response specialists, management, and even law enforcement if necessary. Number 5, document the incident. After getting everybody involved and trying to find out what has happened, you determine the damage and what has occurred. It is very important to document the incident, all aspects of it, including the time it occurred, the dates, the details of what happened, how it happened, what was the vulnerability that was exploited by the hacker. This way you get to know step by step what occurred and how it occurred, to be able to carry out and have a holistic idea of what happened. Documenting the incident will prepare you for the next plan, which is recover from the incident. When you've been able to determine what has happened, you can now determine, okay, this is what to do to prevent such from happening again. This is what to do to prevent it from being from a reoccurrence, or how to protect it from such attacks in the future. You take steps to recover from the incident, such as restoring data from backups, replacing compromised hardware, changing credentials across all platforms, and some other activities you can carry out, etc. Review and revise the incident response plan to gauge the effects. This is necessary to assess if the plan met expectations, how the incident can be prevented from repeating, and general evaluation of the system to set up more security or implement changes needed. This is where you try to find out from all that you've gotten and all the information you've gathered. You review and you revise the incident plan to gauge, was your activities enough to stop the spread? Was your activities enough to minimize the impact of the damages? So this way you carry out necessary changes and prevent it from happening in the future. So this is the basic step-by-step incident response plan for users. Here are some important things you've learned so far in this module. We've talked about the importance of safety measures in cybersecurity and how to implement them effectively. We talked about the curative and the preventive measures. We also looked at the two main approaches to cybersecurity safety measures. How do you prevent? How do you safeguard yourself from even having to face any incident? And when it has happened, when this incident has occurred, what are the next steps for you to be able to minimize the damage and prevent it from reoccurring? We also looked at practical safety measures in relation to software, hardware, and peopleware. We looked at basics of incident response. What are the basic things you need to know about incident response, including how to implement an incident response plan. This incident response plan can be used in any system, can be used in any setting to provide a soft landing when we have cyber attacks or cyber incidents, and what can be done to curb the spread or damages that can be incurred.